December 31st, 2025, New Year's Eve, where I'm at. And phones are open, 505-510-4226. The only thing is, the sound quality may not be perfect, but we'll see. I'm willing to try it, and we'll get the best possible sound that we can. So again, the number is on the screen, 505-510-4226. Open topics, end of the year, sentiments, grievances, confessions, criticisms, etc. Hopes and fears. I mean, if you're still scared of some of these things, this is the last night to talk about it. Because my one resolution for New Year's Eve is to no longer tolerate bad conspiracy theories that are actually mislabeled as even theories. If people are settled in their opinions about things, have at it. It's not my place. I'm not going to interrupt your state-created religion, which is what we're really looking at here. It all comes down to religion. What's up, Austin? Thank you for joining. If you're in the chat, you will be getting a blue wrench free of charge. What's up, Pippi Langstrup? Thank you for joining. Yo, she says. So we have a list of PSYOPs that we're going to talk about. First of all, we're going through the PSYOPs of the year. So right off the bat, there's one that you think deserves special attention. Let's do it. But starting in late November into December, January, you had the drone panic, which is a wave of fear and media attention around mysterious drone sightings over Jersey and the East Coast. And this particular PSYOP started as mostly rumors, and people were confusing airplanes, normal airplanes, with drones. And it's because sometimes perhaps the plane is taking off or landing, or it's making a turn, but from your perspective, maybe it's a little difficult to tell if you have bad eyesight. I don't know. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. Because what you had were people reporting drone swarms over residential areas. Well, all of these were reviewed, and they were all determined to be just regular airplanes. And Venus. There were people who were convinced that the planet Venus was a drone. People were confusing planets with drones. People in New Jersey, I should specify. But I think it might have spread, actually. I think the whole thing started spreading, this panic. And it took rational minds to beat it back, into its place, which was just a panic. Like Metabunk's Mick West, who insisted that if you're going to release something as evidence, you need to provide metadata, direction, location, and time, so they can cross-reference it and see if it's not just an airplane, which it was in every single instance. Nobody even saw a drone. Complete fabrication, complete hoax. Now, who's responsible for this? The people with the fake sightings? I think this was something that was, in my opinion, I think this was a deliberate PSYOP, maybe a gullibility test. I think there's something to it. I don't think it was organic. So that was the main one in January. When was Austin Metcalf stabbed? Because this one followed in the wake of Sinners. Got to get the months right. That was in April, so we should actually push that one back. I want to go in order. Again, we're just discussing the major PSYOPs of the last year. 2025 was very good for what we do. The Charlie Kirk event was one of the best examples of a psychological operation with all of the usual hoax indicators, as well as hallmarks of a staged event. One of the best examples since probably the Boston bombing, if not Sandy. And in that context, it's very good for us. This is good for business. It's good for the purposes of elucidating these points, educating this new platform, this off-world stage perspective on what we're really looking at. Jamarian May says, PSYOP safe space. Well, this is the only place where PSYOPs aren't safe, but you can safely discuss them. By the way, chemtrails is a PSYOP. Mandela effect is a PSYOP. These are what you would call direct actions, where a target demographic is hit with some kind of cognitive sabotage inducing misinformation line. That's what they're doing. They're just slinging psychosis at people, seeing what sticks. Seasonal gift and gadget says, Happy New Year when Sirius gets to the lowest point in New York. Yeah, Sirius is going to fall very soon. Tonight's the night where everyone worships the dog star. They hug strangers, scream and dance, and all that around the big ball falling from the sky, which the ball drop represents Sirius falling. Sirius is also associated with the Egyptian New Year. And I've heard various explanations for why it's called the dog star, the blazing star, the gods. The dog star reference, from what I've heard, has to do with, I believe, the idea that it warns of the annual floods. And so, like a dog, it issues a warning. It's also, I think, something about Anubis, the psychopomp, the dog-headed god to the underworld. But it has a great deal of significance in the various New Age cults. And last year, someone called and mentioned some interesting things about Times Square and the ball drop and the significance of Times Square. Maybe they'll call back. Dinah Southard says, use the same cherry fake dyed in to get the recorded security cam. Oh, yes. Did you see that at America Fest? They recreated the Charlie Kirk death tent. They should have allowed everyone to experience it. Like, hey, put on the squib, get your freedom shirt, get your custom gushing neck wound stain on your shirt. Like, that was grotesque. And there were people doing these thirst trap selfies at the death tent. Like, they should make a recreation of the Ford Lincoln with like prosthetic brains and theatrical blood in the back. Pose on the back of the car like Jackie, like on all fours on the back of the car. Like, what the hell? And Miles Mathis finally caught up on this whole story about how 2 months before the assassination, JFK made a home video where he gets assassinated, and they enlisted the aid of their Secret Service agents. Sounds to me like a rehearsal. But yeah, 2026 is going to be fake AF. Eddie F says New Year's, new PSYOPs. Yes, but we've got to point this out. Every single PSYOP we are going to experience in the next year is already planned, already scheduled. It's on a program that we're not privy to, but we can ascertain what's coming up based on the wider media ecosystem, which is an inherently predictive model. It has you can extrapolate from what the masses are being targeted with, and from that determine or guess, somewhat predict what we're likely to experience. And right now, I would say uh, elite bunker stuff is big, and nukes are so hot right now. And then you've got the Odyssey coming up which has Poseidon, which I think is very significant in the way that the nuke has been presented to us symbolically. Godzilla, a metaphor for the nuke. The Kraken symbolism. The nuclear submarine, Hunt for Red October, even Hulu's The Tempest. We've had many examples. Well, there's this new one called Paradise, where there's this radioactive tsunami. But there are many examples of the nuke being characterized in such a way. And then you have this weapon that Putin's bragging about called the Poseidon, which can apparently take out coastal cities. And again, we're talking about a sea attack, a sea-based attack. So that's what I'm saying, is that you can kind of predict, but we don't know what's on the program, but it is known. Crisis actors are learning their lines right now. Some of them train on the spot. Like the last guy that asked Charlie Kirk a question was caught on camera rehearsing his response to the shooting before the shooting, putting on his cry face, his shocked face, the gestures. It was all there. Seth Black says people wore ear bandages after Trump got shot in the ear. Yeah, exactly. So why wouldn't they want to have like a Charlie Kirk neck wound? This is just death. This is like some kind of occulty thing. This martyr, this worship of this dead person. Megyn Kelly says she prays to Charlie Kirk. And Candace Owens summons his spirit. Candace Owens said that the ghost of Charlie Kirk came to her bedroom one night and said, Candace, I've been betrayed by everyone. And that's why she's on this rampage. She has uncovered some interesting leads, though. Like, there's like half a dozen Tylers in Charlie Kirk's life, all of them bad. All of her exes are named Tyler. Tyler the Executioner in Snake Eyes. And then Tyler at TP USA betrays him, embezzles a bunch of money. He gets shot by a guy named Tyler. Getting ahead of ourselves. We're still in January. So what was the big PSYOP in February and March? Before we get into, I mean, I really think this last year kicked off with the stabbing of Metcalf because it was the twins. And Jake Lang from January 6th came out and tried to racialize it, try to make him into this like white Trayvon Martin. And it followed in the wake of the movie Sinners, which is like #1 right now on Netflix, no, on Amazon Prime, with Michael B. Jordan and his own self as a twin. And the twin dies bleeding in the other's arms. And that movie was about racist vampires. Like all the vampires were white. So it kind of aligned with the general tone of the incoming PSYOPs, which were then followed up by additional ones. Like you had Rodney Hinton Jr., the guy who was killed by the police, and his father kills a cop in retaliation. Then you had Raja Jackson versus Psycho Stu was also put in that context. Then, of course, you had, what's her name? Was it Shyla Hendricks, the racist at the playground? So we had a bunch of racial stuff. The Annunciation school shooting is probably one we should get into. That one was fantastic. Happened after the movie Weapons, and it contained all these same core elements, really building on this new mass shooter archetype. Because now the mass shooters are furries, Antifa, satanic Nazi trans witches. They're targeting Christian schools and children. Way different than the neo-Nazi bowl cut white kid. They changed it. There's a plot twist in 2022. And interestingly enough, it really did coincide, I think, with the Stranger Things series, which had a lot of elements that were connected to school shootings that were at the same time, such as the Uvalde school shooting, which, by the way, had 2 injured, 17 killed, another 217 code, which has been frequent in these shootings ever since that House bill to overturn the ability to own assault weapons only got 217 votes and failed. But again, Stranger Things has consistently been used to add a couple of things into the world stage. The satanic panic theme, but also this new breed of mass shooters, like left-wing shooters. I did not see that coming. But they had to do it, I think, because the right didn't care about mass shootings because it was public schools, which they're against, and the shooters were usually on their side. I mean, Nick Cruz had a MAGA hat when he was in his backyard in his tidy whities, dry firing his weapon, and his neighbors were recording it. Like, we got to revisit some of these psyops. We talk about AI slop. What about psyop slop? It's all been bad, like hilariously bad. The tiny book person, the bullet deflecting bra and belt buckles. Like we got to go back and go through these things. Then we have the Thousand Oaks shooting where the guy gave he used his belt as a tourniquet and how somehow managed to not get any blood on his hands. The Nate says, can the Discord be cataloged by month in summary so it's easier to determine what we're talking about throughout the year? Yes, absolutely. We can export and use or enlist AI. I have a agent. I just haven't been really active with my AI agents lately because my computer's packed up. But there is a AI agent in the, it's called the IPS stenographer. And you type in exclamation mark summary, and it will provide a summary of what was talked about in the last 24 hours in a PDF and audio format with quotes and pie charts to show who was participating the most, for example. All right, let me reopen phones. I think I shut them off by accident here. All right, continuing. Going through your comments. Lily Bell says, hi, thank you for joining us. Plain Decoded. Donna Southard says, Candace, the Witch of Endor. Well, Candace Owens has been targeted by Alex Jones lately, and people are making a lot about this beef. And I don't even think they're competitors in the sense of, professional competition, because both of them agree in the big live 2025 that Charlie Kirk is dead. If you believe Charlie Kirk is dead, you've been deceived. There's enough information to cast serious doubts on the entire story. And now it's become a joke. Erica Kirk has rendered this thing into a joke. We're at this point now in the theater of Psywar where laughing at a widow is somehow deemed appropriate because the acting is so bad, so over the top. I think the sequin vest is what ended it, but that and the fireworks. But they unleashed some kind of irreverence here where people aren't giving a damn. Yeah, pie charts. So you get a pie chart, it's like 33% of the comments were by Diana, 22% by, and this is just me messing around with these AI agents just to see what they will do. But I like the idea that every 4 hours, like clockwork, we get a press release of everything that we discussed, condensed, organized, listenable, downloadable, or readable. And this is just sort of a prototype for what will be implemented in the IPS newsroom once the tabloid goes into production. I will be relying heavily on AI agents to do a lot of the manual work, specifically press releases. Busy said, I just watched the Stranger Things finale, ends with I don't know if I want to give any spoilers. Scotty says, fake alien invasion for 2026. Well, there's a Steven Spielberg movie, and people seem to think that because there's a Steven Spielberg movie, it's going to happen for real. If it happens in the movies, it's real. I guess that's where we're at now. How convenient would that be? But generally speaking, the predictive content happens before the event. So when I saw Oppenheimer was coming out, I'm like, okay, well, the nuke's not going to happen until after this movie has thoroughly saturated the zeitgeist. And then you got Fallout that follows it necessarily, because that's the thing. EMP, nuke, then Fallout. Fallout's the long-term agenda, locking us down and censoring the internet. So will there be one in 2026? It'll have to be after July or August. But I really don't think that there's going to be an alien invasion. I think more likely we're just going to experience the gradual delegation of power to AI, a higher intelligence. So it may as well be aliens. And if you look back at a lot of these movies, like, for example, Colony is one that had a lot of foreshadowing for what we've lived through. That was back when I started mining Netflix for clues. And I was watching Colony, season 3, episode 11, and it's all about this alien invasion, but you never see the aliens. The government just hands over power to the aliens, and they send people to the moon to work on the moon base. And that's it. Life goes on as normal. Although everything is somewhat locked down because of climate change or something. But they talk about how Seattle is ground zero for the rebooting of civilization. So at the time, I'm like, okay, 3/11, Seattle, ground zero, reboot civilization. And then the next year, 3/11, ground zero, Seattle for the, not reboot, but the Great Reset. Same thing. All right. So to continue here, we're talking about the PSYOPs of the year that are worth talking about. Now, the Psycho Stew one, you may have missed it. I think I solved this one, and I got a lot of flack. Sean Strickland, who's an MMA fighter, tweeted about it, how terrible it was that Raja Jackson punched Psycho Stew 23 times in the face. My first indication that that was a hoax is that he wasn't punched 23 times. The guy didn't even swing his arm that many times. So why did they use that number? So I slowed it down, and I counted maybe 11 that contacted, but it looked like he may have been fluffing his beard. And the angles of the punches were kind of weird, like an arcing swing when the person's right in front of you unconscious on the ground. So my thinking is this is how the magic trick was performed, and it tricked like most people. When Raja slams, he body slams Psycho Stew to the ground, Psycho Stew goes unconscious. So we're supposed to believe he's not awake. That's what got people. So when you see the fists swinging and his face going back and forth, your imagination is like, it just, oh, it's like an optical illusion. You're like, okay, well, obviously he's being punched. Because if he's not awake, how is his head jerking back and forth like that? That's the illusion. The fact of it is, he was not knocked out. Psycho Stew was not unconscious. That body slam was consensual. He wasn't caught by surprise, and it was no different than any other kayfabe WWE style body slam, where the weight is evenly distributed across his entire back, and it's unheard of for people to get knocked unconscious from a properly executed body slam in a wrestling ring, unless they're doing it for dramatic effect. It doesn't just happen. Oh, he got body slammed, it knocked him out. Doesn't happen that way. So my point of it is, and I looked into the medical literature on this, I couldn't find anything like it. So my conclusion here is that was the ruse. You're supposed to believe he's unconscious and he didn't wake up for 24 hours over a body slam. So anyway, that was totally fake. It fooled a lot of people. A lot of people got very emotional, and many of Sean Strickland's fans threatened to come to my house and punch me in the face dozens of times to show me what's real. I'm like, only if it's that kind of punch where you slap the ground with your foot, where you stomp your foot, and then you punch right past me. Like, but I'm not going to take real hits over this stuff. But people get very emotional, is my point. And there's a correlation here between emotions and beliefs as opposed to the intellect and knowledge. So you think critically, you come to know something through skepticism, you're kind of dispassionate, unattached, you're just responding. But if it's something you believe, it's because you had a visceral feeling, oh, that looks so real, that was so mad, I'm so outraged, emotions, rather than suspending judgment, you're emotionally reacting. So I noticed the people who wanted to beat me up over this, or the ones who thought it was real, were the people who got super emotional about it. And I'm just not triggerable like that anymore. Like, I'm over it. Like, these psyops are, for me, this is research. It's sometimes they're entertaining, but oftentimes it's like we're not participating. And this was sort of a concept I brought up earlier. The idea of the participatory psyop, where some of these invite you to participate, to get involved, and even just following it and reacting as though it's true is participating. So if you're like just responding to the event and arguing with people over who did it, yeah, in some way you're helping to reinforce the psyop. So I talk about predictive programming, concurrent programming, and then the follow-up reinforcement programming. The reinforcement stuff, all of it, is what follows the main event. But that's the stuff that really cements it into the public imagination, especially if you're participating in it. Just the discussion of the event afterward, on the faulty premise that the thing was actually real. Beat up, that's low IQ. Well, these were MMA people, and yeah, they were threatening violence against me. I wasn't intimidated. I was just kind of shocked at how they find it beyond the pale for me to suggest that it was fake. It's like they're in the business of simulating combat. If anybody could be capable of faking it, it's the people who are trained to do it for a living. So the difference between the punches that we saw and all the moves that came before is that we were told this one was real. They designated that one real, and now suddenly everybody responds like it's real. It's a joke. But that's what we're in. We're in the desert of the designated real. But we don't get to designate for ourselves because our perceptions are faulty. We have to outsource to authoritative sources like Fox News and CNN. Happy 2026, you auto-hoaxing MFers, says Penguin Doctor. Yeah, is it? It's 8:26 p.m. here. I might still go to a party or so, or two or three. I've been invited to a few places, but I'm kind of not inclined to go driving around when all the drunks and meth heads are going to be drag racing and doing donuts and stuff, firing guns in the air, stadium fireworks at the crossroads. Like, it's kind of unhinged out there right now. And I had this premonition, but it may not mean anything. I had a premonition about going to a graveyard or having to go to one, and I thought it meant somebody was going to die. But I ended up having to drop off some candles at a graveyard just by coincidence. So I ended up in one anyway. So maybe that was it. No one had to die. Poncho Lefty says, I don't get it. Who benefits from the Psycho Stu fakery? Okay, now that's a good question, because that's what I always ask. Because somebody was saying about that Anthony Joshua boxer and his car crash where 2 people died and he survived. Like, well, why do you think it's real? I don't know if it's real. I just don't know if I have enough information to think it's fake. What is the agenda behind the fakery? So the Psycho Stu event, what would be the agenda behind it? In its utility, the way that it was used, you will find the clues, because it was only promoted in the far right media ecosystem, the manosphere, the MMA types who are big in conspiracies. But all of the people who are being inundated with woke right stuff and the racialized psyops, they took the side on this one that it was essentially a racial attack. They racialized it, just like they did the stabbing of Austin Metcalf. And it was coming from all of the major influencers. And I heard some people just say some things that were just, pretty much suggesting that the reason why he couldn't stop attacking is because he doesn't have any self-control because of his race. That's what people like like Stu Peters and many others were saying. They turned it into a race thing because we just had the Shiloh Hendricks scenario where she's making money on GoFundMe for being racist at a park, and then Carmelo Anthony's making money after killing that white kid, and that was turned into a cause. And this kind of culminated because after the Psycho Stu thing, it culminated with the stabbing of the white girl on the subway by a black assailant, which was then turned into their white George Floyd moment, according to Charlie Kirk, until he was killed and he became the white George Floyd for their movement. But it was racially charged. That's what I think the intent of it was. And if you look at what social media is doing, is it's giving the PSYOP entertainment complex a direct conduit to every single person to get them to participate in these events. to get them to absorb the memes, to be hit by those influencers, and to fall into these bubbles. Nate says, yeah, Poncho, Psycho was a continuation of the racial tension from the subway. Which came first? Was Psycho Stew first? Or I think the Psycho Stew was first. Although the subway killing wasn't made public for like a month. And that was a stabbing in the neck, sort of like Charlie Kirk's. And there were many neck injuries. Even the Ryan Routh, who tried to shoot Trump in the golf course, had tried to stab himself in that exact part of his neck with the pencil in the courtroom. A lot of neck stuff, though, we had noted. Even leading up to the Reiners being killed with their throats cut. So you had Austin Metcalf, the stabbing, a lot of knife stuff as well. And by the way, the movie Sinners was all stabbings. It's a vampire movie, so a lot of impalings and stabbings, a lot of bloodletting. And at the end, the Grand Dragon and the clan, who are all vampires, get mowed down by, I think, machine guns or something. Very good movie, by the way. If you haven't seen Sinners, if you like horror movies, vampire movies, I think it's very well done. I had no idea they weren't really twins. Okay, so we talked about Psycho Stew. Okay, the subway killing with that Irna, what I don't want to know her name because everybody's like, say her name, paint a mural of her. She's your sister, and you're Charlie Kirk. And Jack Posobiec at Amfest, which has 33 stars on its American flag. He's like, if you want an Erica Kirk, be a Charlie Kirk. If you want a Charlie, be an Erica. Like, wow, I don't know. This veneration for this dead guy is that they have an empty chair for him that they still honor. They had empty chairs for him at Christmas. Jack Posobiec's up there saying on Thanksgiving, what would Charlie have for dessert if he was here? It's necromancy in these evangelical churches where they have AI Charlie Kirk delivering sermons about how dying's not a big deal. It's like getting promoted. You can do more work from up there. I've lost a lot of respect for religiosity itself in 2025. Not one religious person saw through the Charlie Kirk facade and the hoax and the act. They buy it. They think it's all authentic and real. It's like, oh, your religion doesn't give you any discernment about obvious deception in front of your face. And then you watch these people just get duped through their emotions and everything else into this this new religious, I guess it's more of a political religion, this religiosity. It borderlines on state-olatry, where they're basically just worshiping the government now. Idol worship. Like, people are mocking it, but the fact of it is the believers are fully backing the idea of Erica Kirk coming out with fireworks, with Nicki Minaj, and launching this new career, which seems to be the whole purpose of the event itself. Nobody knew Charlie Kirk. Everybody knows Erica Kirk. Everybody I know they can't shut up about her, which makes me think she's probably going to be vice president. And that was put out there days after the event. That was already talked about as of the memorial on the 22nd. Nate Watley said, Psycho was kind of easy to detect because it was recorded and documented from beginning to end as if they wanted eyes on all angles except for, yeah, we should point that out. That the event was staged, and they admit that it was staged, but their claim was, oh, it was staged. Psycho Stu crushed a fake beer can on Raja Jackson to make him mad, but it was all staged. But that Raja actually got mad, and he started hitting the guy for real. So they're like, oh, it was staged, but he went out of his off the script. Plain Dakota says, ban all displays of religious beliefs is my new belief. I'm all for tolerance. I'm like coexist. If you're a Scientologist, you're a Mormon, you're a Muslim, Jehovah's Witness, you're all good with me. 'Cause, some people prefer to exist in a very subjective state of belief, a little more abstract, a little more solipsistic, because you can. It's a luxury that we're afforded these days. I have no problem with it. I'm just not a believer. And as long as the believers aren't empowered to burn or stone the non-believers, then let them have at it. And the dominant belief system today, the dominant religion, is the mainstream mediated version of events. So every black screen, every TV, every movie screen is a portal for this belief system to enter into your mind. I mean, you're not going to be able to stop displays of religious belief. You can't suppress this. The pageantry is intrinsic to every form of entertainment propaganda that we view. It's inescapable. We're in something of an echo chamber. Like we're in a global cult. But yeah, again, what I would say is this, and religious people don't agree. Religious people believe, and this is true, every religious person believes that their religion is right. You don't see Mormons like, man, I should really be a Muslim because I know they got the right story. No, every religious person believes that their religion is the correct one. Therefore, everybody else is wrong. And they all believe that. I'm like, so instead of everybody believing everybody else is wrong, let's just go with, hey, everybody's equally wrong. You're all wrong. So you're all equal. They can't all be right. It's just not possible. But it's probable, I would say likely, that they are all wrong. Each and every single one of them. But why wouldn't it be? I mean, these are uh, myth-based frameworks for describing the world as it is, where it came from, as it is, where it's going. It's to create a worldview, a context for one's life. It's just mythology. Nothing wrong with that. Oh, that's a good question. Poncho Lefty, I'm glad you brought that up. Did you ever find out who paid the Etsy witches to curse Charlie Kirk? So that whole thing was the Jezebel witches, which totally connects to Snake Eyes and the Hurricane Jezebel. And the general story or idea of Jezebel, as it's used today, refers to a deceptive woman. And every single entertainment counterpart to Erica Kirk, from Snake Eyes to Heads of State to The Tempest, involves a Jezebel, a betrayer. And that's what she's looked at as right now by a ton of people. So the fact that you had Jezebel witches throwing in a curse only adds to this general story of this image they created. It's not an accident that people have come to this conclusion that she's not this tragic widow, but that she's some kind of power hungry, clout chasing, uh, soon to be politician. Like, so she's, in other words, they created this image by design. And those Jezebel witches, yeah, that I recall that story. I had to put that into my list here. Plain Decoded says we should wear ridiculous hats and festoon ourselves. Well, I think I should point out here that my main issue here with religion isn't really about theology in this context. I refer to religion as sort of a branch of government at this point, just like entertainment. These things are all interconnected. Busy says, Tim, Caroline Kennedy's daughter died. The New York Times article is 9 minutes and 11 seconds. That's right. You mentioned this. She mentioned she was going to die on 11/22, and then she dies, and the article's 9/11. The Kennedy curse. Jenna Lovecraft Reeve says, I have Times Square live up on my TV. Well, apparently there's a lot of events being canceled because of the threat of terrorism. So I don't know if that means they're setting the stage or if it's just to create the perception that they're keeping us safe. It's all just to keep you paranoid. And I'm leaving a lot of that stuff behind. Like I said earlier tonight, if you believe in conspiracy theories, it's not my place to disabuse you of that. It just reveals that you have holes in your mental immune system. Your mental immune system is compromised. You've got mind AIDS, which is curable. You can actually cure mind AIDS. It's a modern miracle, and it's free. You just listen to Infinite Plane Radio, and it will inoculate you. You will go from a triggered, reactive, emotionally engaged PSYOP casualty to a skeptical, detached, but responsive off-world stage media critic. Much better place to be mentally. You know, I brought this up before, how we talk about space quite a bit here, but I would argue the whole space program has always been, like the Space Odyssey telegraphed this brilliantly. The space program has always been, the program itself has always been the programming of your inner space, the space between your ears. That it's always been worldview warfare, and they would control the space between your ears through the movie screen, through the TV screen, symbolized by the monolith. Pete Tripper says, too bad I can't rewind and watch this live feed at 2x speed. I think you can even go faster. I have Audible, and sometimes I'm up there. I've been finishing a lot of books lately. Ever since my 10-day media fast, I've reestablished the habit of reading daily. And it's important to do so anyway. I think if you're going to be writing quite a bit, I think these things go hand in hand. And 2026 is the year that we are going to get the tabloid into circulation. I want to have the first issue out at the same time that I begin promoting the book across the plane. It's a whole other topic, but the IPS Insider is going to serve a number of purposes as far as our overall objectives. It's going to be a way to also network, which is a huge part of what we're doing right now. We have to aggregate all of the Truman Show escapees. If you're on the way out, if you don't fall into the triangulation of the media duopoly, mainstream and alt, if you're not still adhering to conspiracy theories as though these things are viable theories or likely explanations, if you're out of those containments, these compartments, you have a place, and that place is the off-world stage perspective. That's who we're trying to reach. Now, the people who are clinging to guardrails, who are huffing the chemtrails, promoting anti-vax, like, they can stay. They can stay engaged in the Psy-War. They can remain casualties. It's like they have PTSD or something. Like, the Psy-War never ends for them. And in my view, if you're scared, you lost. That's the game. If you're scared, you lost. And people say, I'm not scared. You just told me that 5G towers will sterilize me if I don't sleep with aluminum foil pajamas. And they try to downplay that they're scared. No, if you're warning me about anything, you're scared of it. You don't have to act tough, but like, you're a needle phobe, you're a xenophobe, you're an alienophobe. Like, these are things you're scared of. You can't bring up these horrifying things and claim you're not actually scared of them. Like, The people who say that we're being hit with chemical warfare from the airplanes. Like, yeah, that's terrifying. If I thought that was true, I wouldn't go outside. So you don't have to play like you're tough and that you're just gonna tough it out. You're gonna be stoic, just gonna inhale the aluminum and barium. Just shows they don't really believe it. Fear is the mind killer, says capture the loops. That comes from Dune. And there's another Dune quote that I have to bring up here because it explains everything about the world stage. Okay, here it is. This is the best quote, and I hope I put this in the book. They are not mad. They are trained to believe, not to know. Belief can be manipulated, but knowledge is dangerous. So that distinction between belief and knowledge is fundamental to the IPS think tank's assessment of world news. And the categorizing of people as MSM, MSM plus, is to categorize them as believers and alternative believers. And if you're a low information news consumer, you are a believer. Unless you're doing some reality testing and not telling anybody, you're just a believer. You have to be satisfied with that and trust your sources. But those of us who know a bit more about how this thing works, who have stepped outside of that duopoly, we are the MSM minus, the subtractive view. And instead of believers, we are informed non-believers, if not knowers. And that's because, of course, belief is consistently being manipulated. Look at what they've done with TPUSA. And knowledge is, in fact, dangerous. Certain types of knowledge can be dangerous to the system. Ignorance is also dangerous. What's amazing now is that we're entering into a dark age so fast that I kind of think that if you haven't seen through this thing by 2025, you're kind of screwed for life. I don't know if you can get through this anymore. Like, I think you're done. And the reason I say so is that the only reason why some of us arrived at these conclusions and started looking at news more critically is we started seeing through stuff. But you will no longer be able to visually detect the fakery in the coming months. It's going to become seamless. So then what? You're not going to have these spontaneous awakenings, random people noticing stuff. It's not going to happen. It's not on the menu. So if you haven't already figured out how this stuff works, and if no one gives you a clue, I think you're locked in for good. This is akin to illiteracy. We are entering a new age of illiteracy, but it's a visual illiteracy, which I think is worse, because when you hear something, you can deconstruct the words and reverse engineer it and study it to the letter. Look for internal consistencies, logical fallacies. But if it's a well-constructed visual lie, just an image, you don't have anything to criticize it with. There's no foothold. It looks real to me. And that's where we're at. I saw it on TV, so it's real. By the way, I am watching. So I just watched Naked Gun with Liam Neeson, which is really funny. And at the end of it, it's really about a mind virus that the elite are going to release to make us all go crazy and kill each other while they go hide out in bunkers with the best in live entertainment, including Weird Al Yankovic. And I was describing this to someone, and they said, "Oh, you got to see Paradise. It's the same story. Nuclear apocalypse, mega radioactive tsunamis, and the elite in bunkers, just like Fallout." So again, this bunker thing is big right now for some reason. I'm also watching Begonia. I'm about a third of the way through it, and I'll write a review. But I did detect something. So in Begonia, it's these conspiracy theorists, and they're convinced that this woman is an alien. And the guy who's describing how he knows she's an alien, he's like, "Oh, you can tell. Look at the spacing in the hair, the narrowness of the feet, and the way he's describing her. I'm pretty sure it's a parody of transvestigation and phrenology, which is what we're. It's like this pseudoscience and these false experts. Anyway, Begonia is about conspiracy theorists, but it's one of these movies to make conspiracy theorists look so unhinged that they're dangerous. Capture the Loop says, I like your take on religions all being equally fake. People are killing and arguing over a fake realm of existence. Who has the best control of imagination? Yes, who has the best stories, the best mind viruses? But yes, all religions are equally fake. And I'm something of a, maybe I'm a Gnostic, a Theosophist, kind of Manichaean. I mean, I'm not against the world, but I do agree with these ideas that have resurfaced in the New Age concepts and have pre-existed in some of these older groups like Rosicrucians, or like there's a lot of thinking that went into a lot of these concepts that aren't as simplistic as what religions portray. But the direction I'm leaning here toward is that we should actually determine spirituality based on what we can directly know, what we experience, not what we're told to believe by the authorities. Because what the authorities have done, and I think this is by design, like, okay, they've rendered us visually illiterate right now, the state that we're in, generative AI, everything's just getting exponentially better. But I think religions have rendered us similarly, I won't say spiritually illiterate, but it has, in fact, I think, compartmentalized spirituality from where it should still be part of psychology. Like, I don't think psychology's done. I think it prematurely ruled out the idea of the soul. And I think that whole area has been deliberately compartmentalized so we never put the pieces together. And I think religion is there to maintain that fracture. So I'm really about personal experience. That's why I say Gnostic. I think things you can know. And I happen to think that intuition is a form of direct knowledge that cannot be explained by conventional neuroscience, psychology. It's just not real. It's not acknowledged as anything but just some kind of fluke or a lucky guess or something. But I think there's more to it. But I think there's a reason why it's been shelved, ignored, and marginalized. And I think, again, I think it's part of this wider war on consciousness and self-awareness. I think the epidemic of narcissism is deliberate, and I think it's part of this agenda as well, because what typifies that particular personality style is that it's built around a construct. In their case, it's a construct they know to be such because it's designed to manipulate, but it's just the ego as the entirety of the self and the center of attention and focus. And the purpose of it is to get likes and attention and affirmation. That egocentricity serves the system because the system doesn't really account for us as being anything more than just apes with big egos. Again, the system is inherently soulless in that sense. Poncho Lefty says, Begonia is great. I couldn't get past episode 5 of Pluribus. I got too Gen X nostalgia. Yeah, I've heard mixed reviews on Pluribus. I'm going to continue to watch it when I get the chance. But right now, I'm trying to wrap up Begonia, and I'll do a review. Tomorrow, I'm going to check out the new Avatar as well. We need to keep up with the big meta scripters because nothing they do is inconsequential. Everything they do is helping to set the stage for some historic event. That's what they're doing. That's their gig. These meta scripters, these directors who get these contracts to put out certain messages and propaganda into their films, they're co-creating history. It's got to be a power trip to know that they are manufacturing history, like as a product, as their legacy even. But yeah, I mean, history is a fraud in the sense that it's lies agreed upon, like Napoleon said. It's built upon lies by omission and outright fabrications. What's up, Mom with Son? Says cheers, Tim and IPS. Yeah, so this is the end of the year live stream. We're just going over a number of the big fake events of the last year. And then, of course, preparing for 2026. And just as we get to the end of the year, I finally get my books in. So I just dropped off some copies. There's more to come. I'll be ordering copies of the handbook for the recently deprogrammed, and I'll maintain them here as many as I can in my personal inventory so I can sign and ship. And I'm going to start including PSYOP trading cards because I have some unsold. I'll include those as bookmarks. Capture the Loop says leave the stage behind. Yes. So the off-world stage perspective is simply that, because the stage area, the world stage, is a closed informational system. It is the perspective that we're given from the monopoly on worldview, the official version, the consensus, the collective Truman Show that we're meant to internalize. But if you don't step outside of it, you can't really see it. What we're talking about here is a framework. And we have framework independence. Hoozle says, am I banned or do you not trust me? I don't trust anybody. I don't even trust myself. But here's your wrench. So what we have here is independence from their framework, which means that we have more, whenever we look at any event on the world stage, we have more information than the people who are inside, because we're including things they're not allowed to or they're not privy to know about. And so they don't include these things in their assessment. The assessment of media events from the mainstream or alternative perspective are incomplete, inadequate. That's why Candace Owens and her fan base, millions of fans, will never find the truth about Charlie Kirk. They don't have enough information. They're blinkered. They're guardrailed. They don't have in their realm of possibility fake deaths, simulated deaths, fake assassinations. That's not part of their menu. It's not in their menu. They will never get there. So that's what I mean when I say the world stage is a closed informational system. There are many areas where they are essentially corralled, like in a paddock, like sheep. Whereas we have independence from their frameworks. And so from the outside, we have an objective perspective. We're the only objectivists on earth. That's absolutely true, because the objectivists have always filtered their philosophy through mainstream media, treating it as objective, as not inherently subjective and distorted and bent, which it is. Now, one of the nice things here is that we have a fundamental competitive advantage here. We have a huge advantage when it comes to moving forward, because every other conspiracy theory out there, they're all lost in the mix. And even if you have some kind of novel idea, a bigger channel will take it. But what we're bringing forth here cannot be co-opted and cannot be taken. Like Stu Peters could not adopt this perspective. Candace Owens cannot adopt this perspective. Alex Jones can't touch this. They're not allowed to. It's outside of their purview, above their pay grade, and it's contrary to their purposes. It would be self-destructive and it would be ruinous. They cannot address the world stage as such. They're in it. They can't talk about it as though it exists. That's the big conspiracy. The big conspiracy is this. I talk about this often, like, what is the big point of it? Well, the proactive creating of history is actually putting us into a simulation. That's the whole point here. Yeah, King Ravana, we will be doing the PSYOP trading cards soon. I've been on vacation for 2 months, if you haven't noticed. And by vacation, I mean I've been moving around a lot. But I'm going to be stabilizing things here now. I'm starting classes in about 2 weeks. And I will be getting into an office space so we can really move this whole agenda forward. The next stage is going to involve whiteboards. That's the next stage. And I've been working on this for a long time. The whiteboards, the infographics, the breaking down of these concepts into simplified explanations so that people can at least grasp it enough to tell me that I'm wrong. And then we can begin. And you know what's more? Some of these infographics are probably what's needed to describe an invisible prison. You have to be able to create the images so people can understand what I'm saying. You know, we're talking about this compartmentalized system, worldview, timelines, how we have two timelines that have been fused together, the metascript concept. All of these things can be better explained with graphics. Poncho says, I rotate those trading cards in the fridge. My guests roll their eyes, but they'll get it someday. Right. Well, we have to, it's the Overton window, you know, the window of acceptable discourse. People have only been taken so far. They're allowed to talk about Snake Eyes predicting the assassination, but they can't talk about Tempest, heads of state. The music video is just mentioned, but they can't go on into the nuance. So you'll notice that the narrative only transgresses so far into conspiracy, into the media's lying, but it's like only a safe distance. And the public won't go any further than they're allowed to go. Like there's this guard railing process, sort of like AI. In fact, the term guard railing was used by us before it was adopted by these various AI companies to describe these planted narratives that divert free thinkers from continuing along a certain line of inquiry, and these planted narratives redirect them into mainstream acceptable places. So we've been breaking the guardrails one after another, and we're noticing who still clings to which particular guardrail, because even one of these is enough to keep you in the world stage closed system. If you want to get out, if you want to go off world stage, if you want to see the program so you can actually be deprogrammed, you will have to let go of a lot of lies that you've come to believe in. And beliefs are not sacred, they're not sacrosanct. Just because somebody believes something and they might cry if you say it's fake, that's no reason to defend it. And we're in the information age. We can transition from belief to knowledge. We should be Gnostics. We should be knowers. And again, Frank Herbert from Dune, they're trained to believe, not to know, because belief can be manipulated. That's from Dune Messiah. I may have to rewatch that. I know that Dune had some concurrent programming with the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, with the hand in the box. But look, the PSYOP trading cards are going to blow up in 2026. And from the little testing that I've done, it's very profitable. And everyone I've shown them to have had good reactions. And a lot of people who collect trading cards in general will likely gravitate towards these, especially if we make some very interesting or poignant ones. I have some ideas, as we all, I mean, people have been sending me ideas like crazy. So we're going to continue with the PSYOP trading cards, as well as the tabloid. Those are my primary objectives for this year. I mean, this is a publishing company. That's how I decided to make this work. I also have a line of short ebooks planned for each of these world stage actors that we talk about, where I do a thorough breakdown of each one. So like Elon Musk from a Metascript perspective, Donald Trump from a Metascript perspective, Daniel Penny, Luigi Mangione from a Metascript perspective. So I want to do these shorter treatises on each of these characters to show how ingrained they were into the culture before they even became popular, because they were introduced through entertainment as an idea, as an archetype. So far, we're up to 48 cards. 36 of them have been printed. Tomino says Dune Part 3 will be released in December 2026. Poncho Lefty says battery's dying. Sorry, guys. I'll hang up and listen. Yeah, thank you for joining. I have extra battery chargers now. I have to maintain charger discipline because I'm always on the move. And running out of power is not productive at this time. But as far as the PSYOP trading cards, once we get to 60 or more, I'm going to start doing the randomized collections where you put them in the individually wrapped sets of, I think, 20 something. 2X Hoozle says, so will GTA 6. See, when Grand Theft Auto comes out, it's probably foreshadowing the next spate of riots. How much do riot actors get paid? Crowds on demand. I know there is some organic stuff that does happen here and there, but it's one of those unanswered questions. For example, I'm talking about scale. January 6th was fake. Nobody died. The riots were staged. If you don't know about that, you haven't done your homework. Woo's news. But I was thinking about that. I'm like, if you look at how many people were there, how many actors were available, then it could answer the question about how they maintained control over the Charlie Kirk scene. How many people in the audience of 3,000 were actual just random spectators? And how many of them were actors with previous experience? I think it's a valid question. I'm not saying all of them, but if you have the majority and the insiders know who the outsiders are, you could effectively maintain creative control over the event and how it's recorded. Because people were asking, how come you don't have hundreds of videos? And that's a valid question. You know, if you look at a concert, you see a sea of iPhones recording the concert, which I don't do. If I go to concerts, I do not take my phone out. And that's because the quality of the experience, as far as your recollection of it, your memory of it, will be better if you directly perceive it instead of getting it reduced to your screen first. You can always look at someone else's recording. I'm not going to filter my perceptions through the black mirror. After my 10-day break, I realized that that's a very real possibility. With this attention economy, every second of your attention is being sought after. And there's incentives to continually acknowledge this thing and look at it. And I'm like, okay, I got to make sure that, because you only have so many hours a day, so much time in a day. I don't want to divert one more second than I have to immersion in their system. 2X Hoozle says Bondi was fully staged as well. Yeah, so Bondi and Brown's University happened at the same time. Brown's University had 2 victims of previous school shootings on lockdown. A statistical impossibility. And then at Bondi, you had the cheesecloth guy who had previously been shot at 10/7. Then he comes to this Hanukkah event, a similar event, and he experiences it again after having warned everybody that something bad was going to happen. And then while he's in the field bleeding from his head, he takes selfies and does a video of himself, earning a Golden Hoggy Award. And then he goes back again after the internet memes the heck out of him for the spectacle of the obvious fake blood. He gets memed like crazy. So he goes back there again, and then he cries, and he records it. And that's some serious crisis acting. And I don't think he got paid as much as the guy that stopped the shooter, the guy that was shot in the arm and the hip. But you couldn't tell because he didn't have any blood, because cheesecloth guy took it all. And that guy, who the hero in the story, who took the gun, he made more than $2.5 million on GoFundMe. But yeah, the Bondi Beach shooting was entirely staged and fake. The guy who recorded it, the cinematographer, was some well-known cinematographer who just happened to be there with his camera. And the video goes viral. And they use this as an excuse to start further censoring content because of children and minors, etc. So they're, building up this idea that we can't have this content going viral. Well, it's fake anyway, but these psyops all have multiple agendas attached to them. And this one obviously is censorship attached to it. Let's see here, going through your comments. Busy says that guy's giving Erica Kirk a run for her money as Crisis Actor of the Year. Well, here's what's interesting about it. The cheesecloth guy is legitimately terrible. Like, he's really bad. And he's one of the worst that we've ever seen. Erica Kirk is really good because she's portraying the role of a bad actor. She's portraying the role of a diabolical, Machiavellian, scheming Jezebel witch who had her husband murdered after essentially seducing him, faking like she loved him, because the long-term agenda was take over TP USA. So from that perspective, the characterization of her that we've been given, we were supposed to see her as a bad actor and accuse her of fake crying. This is part of the script. And just by going along with it and saying Erica Kirk was behind it, you're reinforcing the central hoax. It's all reinforcement for the hoax itself. All right, let's see what we have here. Going through your comments. Amusement park rides that simulate Abe Lincoln, JFK, CK, and George Floyd. Yeah, I could see that working, like a PSYOP theme park. That could be fun. Like school shooting drills with paintball guns. Definitely, you could portray. I'm going to be Lee Harvey Oswald. You'll be Lincoln. I don't know about the Chauvin Floyd thing. Might be in bad taste. Riots, a street where you run down the street burning dumpsters and smashing windows. Maybe a run through Kenosha where you play the role of Kyle and you run through town and the pedos chasing you. A guy tries to hit you with the skateboard, and then the communist burglar jumps on you and you got to shoot him in the bicep and the squib explodes. Or some kind of butler event where you're on a tower and you're trying to shoot the guy at the podium. Of course, it would have to be kind of like a carnival setup. But yeah, I think you can make it work. All right, continuing. Gage Grossarm. No, he changed his name to Peter Prediger. Changed his name, grew a beard out, bought some wraparound shades. So he's deep cover, but then he goes on the news to tell everybody that he changed his name and he needs some money because somebody tried to run him over with an SUV. I don't know what that was. Was that a crisis actor trying to score some additional PSYOP money? Maybe jealous of the $5 million that Kyle Rittenhouse made? Kyle Rittenhouse is 100% fake, and his character, this folk hero, they created him definitely based on Chris Kyle, the Patriot Marine sniper who crossed state lines like Kyle, climbed on the dome in New Orleans, and shot a bunch of looters. I mean, the world's changed because at the time of Katrina, the story of this Marine sniper shooting 30 looters was shared like it was heroic and a good thing. And then in 2020, Kyle shoots a couple of looters and a predator, and the media wants him hanged. Plain Dakota says a haunted house. Yeah, I think you could. I mean, I think you could do a lot, like Funko Pop, Audrey Hale, Nick Cruz, Adam Lanza. When we were doing South Pole, we were actually making use of a lot of these characters, and we should probably continue to do so because a lot of them are interesting. We had Wayne L. Sexton on the space station. We had Adam Lanza and David Hogg is the same person, where David Hogg just combs his bangs down, and then he's Adam Lanza. The only reason we stopped doing South Pole is we got censored. And I don't use that term flippantly. We had done a parody of January 6th, and DLive censored us. But up until that point, we had more than 24 people involved in the creation of this weekly cartoon. I'd like to think we could bring that back with the aid of AI, but the problem is the publishing. The last one we did was pretty good. It was Candace Owens and Kanye West striking a deal with Mike Lindell, the pillow guy, to create a bunch of Klan hoods with swastikas on them. And that was banned by TikTok the same day I uploaded it. And when you go through all this trouble to create some art and the state burns it in front of you, it's demoralizing. It makes you not want to create more. I mean, at first it makes you want to double down, but you put time and effort into something that should be given a fair shot at being observed and reacted to. It's art. That's the thing. It's artwork that they're censoring here. And it's barely even political. It's more parody and satire and absurdity. But why would they censor it? And my thinking is this: because we were attempting to create content that would have viral elements, even if it's just one scene. And the whole premise of South Pole is exposing how things actually are. So it's kind of like the off-world stage perspective applied to South Park. I mean, we may get back into it. I haven't decided if it's worth it, but as easy as things are to produce with AI, it might be a good idea. I mean, there's so many new characters to introduce into this. We could have Charlie. We could have Charlie at Valhalla. In fact, we would be remiss if we didn't take advantage of all these buffoons, these bread and circus clowns. Anybody here interested in a reboot of South Pole? South Pole's a 2026 season? Because we could make it happen. I could make it an agenda here. We just have to set some goals. Like, do we want a weekly? Probably difficult. Once a month, twice a month. I mean, maybe a weekly. I shouldn't actually rule it out. The way that we generally would create these is we would have a Discord room set open, voice chat, and we would write the script as a group. And I think now that we have Grok and chat, it might just be almost too easy. I'll test and see what kind of interest there is in the project. I could certainly get behind it. And then music. We got Suno. So music's not an issue either. We could have the voices done. And this is what I did last time with the last one. I recall, I think we used, because the last episode that we did was at Epstein Island, which was purchased by Elon Musk. And they used the temple with LED screens to create the South Pole for the flat earthers to go down and fake a visit at the South Pole. And beneath Epstein's temple were these stables where Elon Musk was creating these hybrids, like the island of Dr. Moreau. So if you haven't seen that episode, it also had Ice and Sori with Ye on a leash, and he was addicted to helium, which I think is a true story. But anyway, we may get back into that in 2026. It's just one of these things where it requires collaboration with a few people. Although AI does, in fact, make certain things doable without outside support, the voices in particular. Yeah, that's right. Witsit Spitsit was in it. Witsit Spitsit. And Vapegate. I mean, what the hell was that? Vapegate was one of the worst things that could have happened to that entire event. And I still don't know what to think about it. I'm at the point where if something's real and it's on camera, there shouldn't really be any question about it. But there were so many questions raised by that. And these were legitimate questions where there shouldn't have been any. That I just walked away from it like, I don't even know what to think. They could have filmed it in the Vegas sphere for all I know. But the fact that Witsit had to use a vape pen to make it look like you could see his breath, that was just cheap. Like, they could have done CGI. They could have used some kind of a Snapchat filter. But yeah, Vapegate was one of my favorite facets of that whole thing. But yeah, I'm still thinking it was filmed in a studio. You know, and there's no reason to think so. They got on planes and they went through all the trouble, but they're the ones who made it seem questionable. Like, maybe they shouldn't have sent some of the shadiest people out there. And then furthermore, when you're talking about science, so that was an expedition in the name of science. Well, you should have people who are part of it that aren't emotionally invested, that aren't advocating for a conclusion, but are simply recording observations and taking these facts and then making the best attempt to get to the truth here. But no, you have these people who are just hardcore anti-flat earthers. It's like, you're not objective enough to claim to be doing any science here. So at the end of it, what does it mean? Well, it means nothing except for the end of the contrived flat versus round debate, which is always irrelevant and missed the point. 2X Hoozle says TFE was filmed on a soundstage. It could have been filmed at the SpaceX headquarters. There are any number of places where it could have been filmed. That's my take on it. And I have a few reasons for thinking so. But I'm certainly not trusting any of these individuals, because why would you trust people who don't know the news is fake? That's one of my main criticisms of Jeranism, is that despite his terrible opinions about the shape of the world and the people who question it, because the guy's very hateful towards flat earthers. And look, I don't care if someone says the earth is flat. Flat earthers are actually just skeptics who've become skeptical about everything. I don't think that's a strike against their character. The name flat earther is a misnomer. That's just one thing of many things they're skeptical of, but it doesn't mean that they say the earth is flat. They're just saying they're skeptics of the model as presented. So it's an open question. They need more information. That's what we're saying. We want more information. We're seekers. So for him to turn his back on all of these skeptics was kind of cold and revealing. But he doesn't know the news is fake. He thinks people die in PSYOPs. He thinks school shootings are real. And this goes for all of those people who went on the trip. They don't know about 9/11. They don't know about anything. So their opinions about cosmogony, the shape of the world, all this stuff, it's like not relevant to me. 2X Hoozle says no wind into Antarctica proved it was faked. I think what got me when there was this scene where the drone seemed to react, because the drones won't run into a wall. It has some kind of a sensor to prevent it from hitting a wall. And as it goes off into the background, it stops, as though it were reaching a wall. And then, okay, here's what got me. The first 30 seconds when Jeranism steps foot in Antarctica, you know what he says? He says, whoa, those mountains, ha, ha, ha. They look like I could just reach out and touch them, but they're 10 miles away. Like, why is he laughing about how the far away mountains look very close? And he wasn't the only one that did that. So it was a big scam. They probably could have gone to Antarctica, but they decided, it's cold. Let's just do this thing at the studio and pocket all that money. Does anybody trust that preacher? He looked like a devil. That whatever his name was, Duffy. He's like 33 years old. I don't know, very questionable character. Plus, he's a religious nutcase. And anybody pushing mainstream religion is questionable anyway to me, because I'm pretty sure that mainstream religion is a facet of government. It's just more mind control. Again, it's there to spiritually neuter us. Like, we shouldn't treat it like it's some institution that elevates us in any way. No, it puts people at war. Every religious person hates every other religious person. I mean, that's fundamentally true. Now, it's all glossed over. It's passive aggressive. It's not overt. But if you get down to it, the basic premise of their worldview is that we're right. We have a divine mandate. They're wrong. We must conquer them. They must submit to us. Mason Free says, are we doing this live? No, this is a replay. And that's just a very bizarre coincidence, the timing of you asking that. 2X Hoozle says they were strolling around in t-shirts and bare-chested. There's no way. Yeah, there are so many things about it that I just found to be very unconvincing. And then Witsit Gets It is also one of these characters who I find to be very skilled as a polemicist. But you have to remember, this is Mr. Logical Fallacy. He will name every logical fallacy flung his way. So he pretends to be this paragon of critical thinking and reason, logic, but he believes in chemtrails. That never made any sense to me. You can't believe in chemtrails if you're capable of seeing through loaded questions, faulty causality, appeal to motive, appeals to ignorance. Like, these are the four main fallacies that make you a chemtrail believer. So if he's able to see through these fallacies in every other context, how does he fall for it when it comes to chemtrails? So that tells me the guy's a propagandist. He's not consistent. Jenna Lovecraft Reef says they charge like $8,000 per person for a cruise to Antarctica. What they tell you is Antarctica. I have no reason to trust anybody in this place. And whatever you say about space, I mean, is space real? Is it fake? You can't really say space is fake because up is real. You look up there, it's there. But is space travel real? Are moon landings real? Is the Earth as shown from space real? Are the astronauts dangling from bungee cords actually in space? No, that's a stage. So what we have are known unknowns. We may not know, but we know what they're showing us is fake. So that leaves us, and we know this because additional information reveals it to be unbelievable. So that leaves us in the position of being informed disbelievers about something that a lot of people just take for granted. But what's behind it, I don't know. What difference does it make about the shape of the world? The main difference is up and down. If the earth is a ball, then there is no up and down. It's all pretty much relative. If the earth is flat, do we assume it's a discrete object? No. If it's flat, then you wouldn't have the built-in assumption of an object in space surrounded by emptiness. But you could just as easily start with the point that, okay, if it's flat, then we're at the bottom of the universe, if anything, until a curve is found, in which case space is up. How far down does it go? Infinitely deep? I don't know. I mean, I don't even believe the universe exists. Like, I think it materializes. It becomes matter as it's experienced. Plain decoded says flat is an aspect, not a shape. Well, it has important connotations, though, because the general misrepresentation of the concept is a disk in space, as though it's just like a planet, but it's flat. And no, the whole concept of the flat Earth would suggest that the Earth is the biggest thing in the universe. And all the lights in the sky, the so-called planets, the luminaries, the sun, the moon, are circuiting above it, not orbiting around it. The difference between orbit and circuit, either they're making circles or they're going around. But the observations wouldn't support the idea of circuit, but would indicate more of an orbit. But anyway, what you mostly have are straw man arguments on both sides. But the shape of the world question has always been a misdirection from what I think is more important to ask, which is open or closed system. How do we get our worldview? Because even if the Earth is as advertised, a round spinning ball, 25,000 miles circumference, it still doesn't therefore mean that the pictures we've been shown from space are authentic. They could still be misrepresenting it for a lot of reasons. Perhaps they're hiding a continent that we're not invited to, like Atlantis or something. I think John Dee believed that the world. See, this is an interesting one too, because John Dee was an advisor to Mercator on these voyages of exploration. You know, the Mercator projection. They had this famous letter between the two of them about this supposed magnetic rock at the North Pole that was 33 miles in circumference of this black magnetic island. But anyway, so on the one hand, John Dee would seem to be someone who accepted the results of the Copernican revolution. He's working with the cartographer on creating this globe. And yet, at the same time, in his private work and his magical practices, his Enochian magical system, which is named for Enoch, the patriarch who talked with angels, uh, in that whole system of magic, the universe is conceptualized as a square, a flat plane with multiple layers to it, which they described as ethers, like levels. Very interesting concept here. But this idea also contains the notion that you could divide the universe into four basic elements, which they symbolize fire, water, earth, air, with the fifth element being the experiencer, the quintessence, the soul incarnated into that world. And this is the basis for magic ritual, which all really borrows from John Dee. Like all the modern occultists, the Wiccans, the various schools of thought on magic, they all work with this idea of a magical circle and the invocation of the four directions and spirit. That's where the pentagram comes from. So his concept of the world seemed to include man as a part of it, and that's experienced as a plane. It doesn't even get into shape. That's not even a consideration. What's more of a consideration in this school of thought is how we are a multidimensional being, and how do you access these higher dimensions of yourself and of the universe, and how this, and the idea here, which is intriguing to me, is that if you can elevate to one of these higher planes, you're getting into the causal realms. Before anything is manifested, it exists in these ethers where your ideas, your actions there have a greater impact in the material, kind of like the source code. And so the idea was like increasing the idea of magic. This sort of magic was the idea that you could increase your power over the material universe, sort of like if you were to throw a rock at a mob chasing you. You know, at best you're going to take down one person because you're on a level plane. But if you were to ascend up onto a mountain and throw the rock and trigger an avalanche, you could wipe them all out. So the idea was leveraging these subtle planes to increase the power you have in the material plane. John Dee was the original 007, and he famously conversed with angels and demons through his iPhone. Well, it was a black mirror, a black scrying mirror. But supposedly, all you need is a black mirror, some incense, some candles, some chalk, some invocations, and that little iPhone could be a portal to some, I guess, the upside down. But anyway, his system of magic is largely what got popularized as ritual magic through Golden Dawn, Aleister Crowley, the satanic stuff, the Wiccan stuff. It all comes from him. Very interesting character overall. I brought it up because on the one hand, he's a globe earther. On the other hand, he has this metaphysical model in which shape is not even a relevant component. So what is it? Do we live on a flat plane and we're somehow co-creators existing at a very low level, but with the potentials of elevation and ascension? Or are we egotistical apes on a rock that's orbiting around a sun, which will at some point burn out, ending our entire story? Charming Anarchist says, as long as the sheeple believe there's a limited amount of resources, all's good in the empire. Let them argue amongst themselves over the shape. Well, look at this from this perspective. We know for a fact that history is real, but that they augment it with a bunch of fake stuff. So there's the objective reality, and then this narrow interpretation and augmentations that are added onto it. So we get this embellished version, a distorted version, but it mostly adheres to the real thing. It's just it adds some stuff. It's a distortion. It could very well be that the earth is as described, but they misrepresent it in order to artificially create scarcity. Because that's the idea here. You know, they lie about history. Why wouldn't they lie about the maps when there's such an incentive? The incentive being resources. Plain Dakota says, we appear to be on a plane, and that's what this place is all about, appearances. I don't know. It depends. A lot of people claim to see the curve. I saw the curve. Jimmy Kimmel is like, I go out on my porch, I see the curve. You go out to the ocean, you see the curve. You go on an airplane, you see the curve. That's what started this whole thing, is people recognizing that many people go around acting like they know something that they merely believe. And when you test these beliefs, you might find out that there's nothing to substantiate them. So unwittingly, a lot of people came to believe certain things based solely upon faith. And when that's pointed out, they get mad. And then it's like, okay, you have faith that the world is as they say because it was shown to you on TV, but these are the same people that lie about every single historic event, that manufacture your worldview. But you're going to think that they're being honest about this. And then what they show us of space and space travel is really bad science fiction. So why would anyone just believe at face value anything? And I think that there's enough reasonable doubt to maintain the position of a skeptic. You don't have to be agnostic. You can say, I'm suspending judgment until we get some impartial third party civilian spacefarers to double check this stuff. I just don't trust the government in this matter. And they have every incentive to lie. But you might experience it as a plane, but you're certainly not going to find anybody that agrees with this. And largely it's a matter of conditioning, because every movie, every cartoon, you're constantly being hit with the globe, the curve, the solar system as presented. But one of the things that we also noticed during the evolution of that conversation is the recognition that most people who believe stuff believe so on sparse evidence, and those who don't believe tend to know a bunch more about the thing they don't believe in, which is why they don't believe in it. For example, liars tell lies, and the people who believe those lies believe the lies unless they have more information that contradicts it. So those who have more information arrive at disbelief. And so what we constantly found was the people who believe the official model and all the official narratives regarding space travel, etc., tended to know very little about space. So then you arrive at this conclusion where, okay, we're looking at an area where we have to outsource our perceptions. So you're left with no choice. You either believe it or you're left with this blank spot. What are you going to do? You claim agnosticism forever? How long can you hold out before coming to a conclusion about what you believe? Well, in my opinion, based on the behavior of media at large, the entire time we've been observing, and as far back as we can look, I think you're very much well justified in not arriving at a conclusion until you feel like it, even if it's 2060. And it doesn't make you a flat earther. It just means you don't believe that the world as we have been shown is undistorted, untainted, unaltered. There's a big difference. You can't let them use some pejorative to marginalize your skepticism as some kind of aberration when it's actually part of the scientific method. In fact, don't you believe the science? Well, no, science isn't something to believe. It's something to use. It's a methodology. So you shouldn't believe the science. You use what the scientific method provides to create the best theoretical model to arrive at what is true, but it's not strictly a belief system. No. And skepticism requires that you suspend final judgment until you've assessed all the available facts, the best information. And new information always has to be included, even if it reframes the entire model. Plain Dakota says because it's a religion. Yeah, I've been saying for some time that we do have a de facto religion, world state church, church of Nasatology. But I'm not highly critical of mythology. I actually enjoy mythology. I don't know why some myths get special treatment. Like, this is my theology, and that guy's got mythology. Like, I don't think so. But as long as we're being tolerant of these things, we can discuss them endlessly. My interest in the topic of religion is also in how many of the traditional religious motifs, archetypes, myths, and characters have been brought back to us through modern entertainment, but surreptitiously, not overtly. It's not like we're out of ideas in Hollywood. Let's read the Old Testament and make a movie about Noah's Ark. They don't state it overtly. They take the entire myth, repackage it as science fiction, but then add into it some communist, revolutionary, agrarian revolution, green revolution code into it. But they just basically have been repurposing old myths. And after watching Superman and Fantastic Four, I concluded that the reason they're doing this, like Superman was entirely sun god, savior, descended savior, basically this reoccurring set of symbols is consistently reintroducing Jesus, Christ, into movies, but not because they want to make you Christian. No, it's because they're amalgamating all these different stories into one. That's the point of it. It's like appropriation. This is syncretism. It's appropriation. And it's appropriation for the purposes of consolidation. I was talking about Serapis recently, who is this Frankenstein monster of a god. And this to me is the explanation for the world stage merging of all these myths. So you have this god construct. So it's not like this is a real creature, a real being, but it was a deity that was created in order to unify disparate groups. And so it's like he was merging Egyptian and Greek deities. So he's like Zeus, Hades, Osiris, and I think he had some wine god stuff like Dionysus, but they merged them into this one big god. And this, to me, perfectly exemplifies what we're always looking at with all these mergers of science fiction, traditional beliefs. But it's all about this one world religion that we all inhabit. This worldview is an amalgamation of everything for the purposes of unity. What's more unifying than space? It's the heaven that everybody believes in, even if they have different traditional religious concepts. It's been superseded by space. What's happened says, this is the best podcast there is. If you're not listening to IPS, you're probably a chump. Thank you. I appreciate that. I've started doing the archives again. I'm getting back into routines here. Made possible by all of you. So thanks again for being members, subscribers, commenters, researchers. We're going to begin 2026 by embarking upon a very important mission, the Great Deconstruction. And the Great Deconstruction is going to create this permanent fixture, as you will see, as we unveil this thing. But generally, we're talking about a timeline from 2026 back to we'll just say 26. So we want to have like 100 years on a timeline. And we're going to have all of the major historic events that we would contend are likely fake or staged. But we're going to have the mainstream version, the conspiracy versions, and then the third column will be the metascript perspective. And this is where we get into the breakdown of the characters, the directors, the predictive and concurrent programming. And we begin to identify this other element. How far in advance was this event planned? When was this on the program? And then as we get into the details and the connections between the movies and the directors, I expect a lot will be unveiled. But one of the things that will be for sure is we are going to reveal that there is, in fact, something you could call systemic fakery. That entertainment has always been co-opted by government for propaganda purposes, that it has always been entrained, and that entertainment has been used to reinforce the manufactured fake history that is performed in front of us as we internalize these fake stories that are then reinforced in these echo chambers ad nauseum until they become permanent fixtures in our collective Truman Show. Plain Decoded says 3 Mile Island didn't have a big concurrent movie. We'll have to look. And we're going to go into directors, actors, and all of their associated movies with a fine-tooth comb. It's going to be revealing. My point of it being a permanent fixture is this. As this gains traction and as it starts to fill out, it's permanent. It's irrevocable. You can't just say, oh, this is fake, dismiss it. The crowd that's always like, oh, these are just conspiracies, or this is the simulation. No, they lost their arguments in 2025. 2025 was the year that the coincidence theorists and the gematria calculator people had to basically step down. I mean, I'm sure they're still doing their thing, but they're no longer authorities on this matter whatsoever. The people who say, oh, the stuff between entertainment and fake events is merely a coincidence. Yeah, you don't know what's going on if that's your perspective. And we do. But as we start building this out, it's going to stand on its own merit. We are describing the model. We are describing a methodology, and we are describing systemic fakery and the entrainment between entertainment and psyops, and how this has gone back 100 years. I don't know how far back this process has been implemented. I think we're looking at the newest iteration of something that's probably ancient. But as this unveiling begins, it's going to metastasize. Others will see what we're doing. It's like starting a fire, because once it starts, once others start adding on to it, you're not going to be able to stop it. It will spread like wildfire over every fake event. Once the methodology is implemented, the mind maps are put in place, our standards are acknowledged, and our definitions are also implemented. So we have the predictive concurrent reinforcement, hoax indicators, meta scripters, and then the concept of news bending and history bending will be thoroughly elucidated through this entire process. So again, 2026 is the year of the great deconstruction. And this is why we are going to be recruiting. And by recruiting, I mean, we're going to be challenging various orthodoxies, guardrails, and narratives that are popular conspiracy theories for the purposes of making a distinction between alt media and off-world stage, and simultaneously getting the attention of those who don't belong in alt media, but who have nowhere else to go because they didn't know that we have this off-world stage perspective. Dave J says all that's been done. No, it hasn't. It has not. You can't project your situational awareness onto the rest of the world. The IPS think tank is the only think tank that has figured out what predictive programming is. The bifurcated psywar, the fake pros and the antis. That's why we're not here huffing chemtrails with some of you truthers. And no, this has not been done. If it's been done, point it out. Tell us where. I remember you've raised this before, and I'm like, what is this guy talking about? You're a dinosaur. That's why he lost his wrench. If somebody wanted to smack Dave J and temporarily remove him from the arena, I'm not going to complain. That's what the wrench is for. Somebody handle Dave J if you want to. I mean, I'm not telling anybody what to do. This is not my personal army, but if I were in a room with this person pushing these agendas, I probably would have dusted him by now. No hard feelings, though. I mean, this is all just a game. You know, this is the arena of ideas, and we are trying to have honest conversation, but we get some people who push some very dishonest claims and hold them up as equally valid to our refutations without ever acknowledging our refutations. So these are believers, hardcore believers in delusions. And we can no longer treat these as equal because they're not. Thank you, Anonymous 3666. Again, it's nothing personal, but it's quality control. We're quarantining this platform against any hangovers, any holdovers from the alt media ecosystem. And the reason why we need this distinction is this. What we're trying to do, the objective here, is to create a disruption. And we have a major advantage. We don't have, as far as the IPS think tank, we don't have any kind of constraints to any particular framework. We're operating outside of their frameworks, and they don't know they're in a framework because they haven't stepped outside of it. You have these Truman Show captives trying to lecture us like they know something we don't. No, we are the most informed media analysts on the internet speaking about these things. It's a perspective thing. If you don't know about PSYOPs, news bending, the world stage, the program, the meta script, predictive reinforcement, concurrent programming, systemic fakery, entrainment between PSYOPs and fake news and meta scripters and government propaganda through every entertainment vector. If you don't know about this and include this in your frame of reference, you're underinformed. You don't have a complete assessment. You're blinkered. That's just a fact. Plain Dakota says Dave J figured it out already. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So solipsism is compatible with the world stage belief systems. You can coexist. You can have your own personal religion, your own personal cosmogony. You can claim you're God. It's all good on the world stage. But out here, we don't really have to tolerate that. We stepped outside of that closed system that elevates belief to something equal to knowledge, direct knowing, experience, reality tested facts. And if your reality tested facts contradict their beliefs, they throw your facts out the window. Like, no thanks. I don't want to be a part of that. I'm not a part of it. I'm actually a conscientious objector to your world of lies. You know, I like that some people in the chat, they spell beliefs with a capital L-I-E. And I think that's valid. Because, you know, lying is the basic technique of witchcraft. Aleister Crowley wrote a book called The Book of Lies. And the word of the new age, abracadabra, which means I create as I speak. And the idea here is that magic is about implementing the will at the highest level to where you're a self-aware co-creator acknowledging the power of words to create, that words are spells. So if you accept that premise, you live by it, and you are very calculated about the statements you make because you believe that words are spells, then what does that say about your interpretation of lies? Well, then you would recognize that a lie is the use of the spoken word to alter or warp or distort reality. So magic is a way of imposing your will, distorting reality through what? Through spells, which are often lies. These are spoken as, and I see this in a lot of spellcraft and schools of magic. There's different theories on it, but a lot of them do contain ideas of statements of intent, where you're not wishing for something, emphasizing that you're lacking it, but you're speaking as though you've already obtained it. Fake it till you make it, lying. So, lying is inherent in the world stage. It's a lie world order. You got these false stories, these lies that are believed. And so the believers are the enablers of the lies. This world of lies only exists because we have believers who carry the lies. If it wasn't for all these maids patients, the world wouldn't have been shaped by mind viruses. Somebody just had a countdown. A bunch of people are drinking champagne and making out or whatever. A couple time zones away from here. So there's a couple more hours till we reach it here. I don't have anything in particular planned. I don't have a kazoo or confetti, but I'm pretty sure where I'm at, there's going to be people firing guns. So I don't want to even go outside unless I get shot. Happy fake New Year, says Anonymous 3666. Yeah, how do we even know it's 2026? It could be 3026, but we're in some small region compared to the rest of the world, and we've been quarantined. Like, we're in the village. That was the story in The Village. In the movie The Village, you have this commune where they're living like it's mid 1800s, rural, no planes, no 20th century, and they don't know that they've been quarantined and they've been kept 100 years, a couple hundred years behind as far as technology and education. Imprisoned by ignorance. And this ignorance is maintained by the elders, that they're called. They're elite, the elders. And a lot of Saturnian symbolism built into that. But the elders maintain a false worldview to imprison them in their ignorance and to keep them blissfully unaware. So a lot of them are very happy, but they're also ignorant and terrified and totally mind controlled. Whatever year it is, let's just go with this. It's 2026. Every single fake event that you're going to experience in the next year is already in the books, already written, already planned. Crisis actors have already signed their non-disclosure agreements. The CGI work has been done. The squibs have been ordered. The agencies involved have all been tapped on the shoulders. Hey, this date, we're going to do this. Netflix is going to release contemporaneous PSYOP reinforcement content. So we shouldn't act surprised. Like, when something that happens, we don't need to react anymore. By reacting, I mean like a visceral reaction, like it actually happened. But we should instead be not jaded, but just observant. And then we will respond when we have a little more time and information. But you're not going to see me leading with engagement bait or falling for truther bait, which is something that's consistently observed. And look, truther bait, which refers to false narratives about the event planted there to make the conspiracy theorists look dumb. That's a very common facet of a PSYOP now. It's a hoax indicator because real events don't have a bunch of fake narratives planted all over to mess with the heads of conspiracy theorists. No, only fake events do, because they account for the people who won't believe, and they want to discredit them and misdirect them because they're being accounted for because the event is planned in fake. Okay, so we talked about overall the various psyops of the year, the racial stuff, the first half of the year, Charlie Kirk. Erica Kirk is a full-blown mind virus at this point. We had a couple shootings, a lot of stabby stuff. September was a big one. No, November was a big one. Just if you don't remember this, Dick Cheney, architect of 9/11, dies on the day the One World Trade Tower opened 13 years after 9/11 on November the 3rd. On November the 4th, UPS plane 2976 crashes in Kentucky into a building, massive fireball, kills 9, injures 11. It flew 175 feet up before it crashed. So Flight 175 is a 9/11 reference. 2976, the number of dead on 9/11. Muhammad Ali Airport, which it was designated on 116. So you have this 9/11 coded plane crash the day after Cheney dies, which had us talking about it. So I was like, wait, was that some kind of Viking funeral 9/11 style for the architect of 9/11? Was Cheney's corpse on that plane? Was it a dummy? Remote controlled? So we were talking about the 9/11 ishness of that entire crash. And the very next day, New York gets a Muslim mayor, and Rudy Giuliani and many others come out and they're like, oh, apparently New York didn't forget about Osama. We have a Muslim terrorist as a mayor. So now 9/11 imagery floods the internet. So now we're 2 days after Cheney dies, a day after this plane crash, and the Muslim mayor gets into office, and everybody's blowing up after over 9/11 like stuff. And then a car explodes in the Bronx, injures 5 firemen. White powder is found at the Joint Andrews Air Force Base, very 9/11-y. And the FAA grounds thousands of flights. So we were like living in post 9/11 America for a few days. It was like this bizarre collective hallucination. Then you have the Muslim terrorist named Muhammad Ali in Michigan. This guy was a ISIS terrorist. Then you have these towers burning, these hotels burning in China look just like 9/11, the towers burning. But overall, 9/11 was brought back in all sorts of ways. You had a UFC fight in Madison Square Garden with a fighter who won's name was Islam. It's like Islam wins in Madison Square Gardens. So if you look at the big picture of November, all kinds of 9/11 foreshadowing. So then in December, halfway through, you have Bondi Beach. You have this Hanukkah event being attacked. And then you had 5 terrorists in a car that were run off the road nearby. And then you had planned terror attacks in Los Angeles foiled. And then in a few places, they canceled their events because of the threat of terrorism. So all this just kind of came back into focus with the death of Dick Cheney. And I don't believe he died that day. I think it's too perfect. Like either he was already dead, he was on ice, and they gave him the Viking funeral, or he's still alive somewhere. But the story was written so that he would be unalived, deaded, killed. What's with these euphemisms? Unalived. I keep hearing that one. People are so afraid of the Elgo. The Elgo is watching. Mind your language. So I think they likely scripted him to die on 11/3 because it fits in with the whole 9/11 story. You know, Donald Trump was part of this discussion, this planning, this group that was planning to rebuild the Twin Towers. And his idea was to create the one world Phoenix Tower. Again, 11/3, very significant date. 11/3, 3/11 has a lot of references in the realm of predictive programming. So again, there's just a lot of questionable stuff there. Exploring again says Happy New Year's. Oh yeah, you're on that side. You're in the part of the country where the people think that airplanes and planets are drones. Let me get back to my list. We talked about Psycho Stew. That was fake. 3-eye atlas. Did anything ever come out of that? I kind of don't think so. But look, overall, 2025 was very good for what we do. Special thanks to Erica Kirk for eliminating the weak claim that the correlation between entertainment and psyops is just a coincidence. You can no longer claim that because of Erica Kirk so closely matching the scripted characters in all of the various movies that represent her. Snake Eyes, Heads of State, Tempest. It's too perfect. Violet Pengon says that UPX crash was 3 on board, 11 dead on the ground. Yeah, the reports were interesting because it was like 3/11, then it was 9/11. And I'm sure we didn't get to all of it. Dorian says, New Year sucks for my rescue animals. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was living with the dog. I had a dog that was terrified of thunder and fireworks. It's really bad for a lot of dogs. I mean, the way I handled it was using a fan for white noise. I didn't understand it. I guess it's evolution or something. I mean, there's like instinctual fear, but I hear like thunder, and the dog would just run behind the couch and just hide. And maybe it's a herding animal, and it's just instinctually terrified of getting caught out in the rain. But the fireworks are the worst. Absolutely. I've had dogs run away because of fireworks and to go find them later. They freak out. All right, let's continue here. I know we've missed quite a few psyops. There's some that are still ongoing. The Rob Reiner, Nick Reiner, Jake Reiner thing, very much strangely coded with Frankenstein's monster. And there was a lot of stuff that we were finding actually that we have to delve into with this father-son dynamic. There was something else too having to do with the Bondi Beach. I think it was another father-son thing. All right, what was the last one? Oh yeah, Brown University, which of course had 2 previous survivors of school shootings who were locked down. Firebrander says your wrench is gone. I'll go ahead and fix that. Yeah, just speak up or leave a comment. I'll hand out wrenches. So we're going to be moving on to the next project, which is the Great Deconstruction very soon. I don't know about South Park this year, but possibly. South Pole, excuse me. Exploring says much love, wealth, health, and happiness. Well, I think 2026 is going to be, if anything, if we have to look at the present media climate, I think we might see something along the lines of alien invasions, nukes, and I think that was the main one. The elite in bunkers is a big one. Could this be the year of the Oppenheimer? We're in the middle of season 2 of Fallout. And there's kind of a cliffhanger in Tempest that I have to keep watching it, but I hate making predictions. And there was this loose prediction I made. I was talking about Christopher Nolan in Dark Knight Rises, where there's a character who's not wearing a mask. And Batman's like, put on a mask. And he's like, I don't need a mask. I'm not scared. And he says, it's not for you. It's to protect the people that you love. Which was a line right out of 2020. And then he hands him a spiked smoke bomb and says, count to 5 and throw this. So it looks like a COVID ball. So you have a mask reference, a COVID ball, and he throws it and he creates a mushroom cloud. So I was like, wait, count down from 5 from COVID and you get a mushroom cloud. So I took from that maybe 2020, count 5 years, then we get the nuke. Now, mind you, this movie was out at least 7 or 8 years before Oppenheimer would have gone into production. So long before he even knew he was going to make that movie, you had this bit of foreshadowing where he's somehow connected to the mushroom cloud scenario. So I'm saying, based on the predictive programming environment and the concurrent programming, it seems like we're ready for Fallout. We're ready for an EMP. We just had a blackout, a substantial blackout a week ago in San Francisco and a few days ago in Moscow. Soap Psyopera says 2026 will be a psyop to remember. Yeah, we could also point out that 2025 was the year that we really got to see how some psyops really do take the form of soap operas. If you look at the alt media between the woke right and the neocon right, and the fractures between Tucker and Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens and Tim Pool, Alex Jones and Candace Owens, what you're seeing here, and then of course Erica Kirk and Candace Owens, there's a soap opera like element here in this big psyop where the central story about the assassination is continually reinforced with all these rumor and gossip driven stories. Plain Dakota says, I can't stand Benjamin anymore. Haven't listened to him in over 2 years. Well, Owen Benjamin is not an off-world stager, so I don't judge him by our standards. He's a typical alternative media type, woke right. That's his place. MAGA ban, woke right. Getting his intel, his propaganda talking points likely from the same sources. After the Charlie Kirk shooting, his response was that we shouldn't have free speech, that we need digital IDs. And this is because online content caused the Antifa shooter to do it. So that's not very deep assessment. That's very reactive. And it's reactive from within his compartment. So it's very lockstep, groupthink, predictable, not exactly critical. I don't have any use for it. And besides, LARPsteading is fake anyway. I'm sorry, homesteading. Homesteading's real. But the idea of going off the grid while making a internet show about it is kind of a contradiction. But you're not off the grid if you haven't figured out the world stage. If you haven't figured out how much of this stuff is fake, if you're still contained within the political horseshoe, if you fall in the category of woke right or woke left or red pill woke, if you fall in these categories, you're not off the grid. So, milking goats doesn't take you out of the Truman Show. It's all just performative. So you did all that work for nothing. You're still in your Truman Show. Howard Boyd, thanks for joining. Charming Anarchy says UK rain turns off the lights while wearing Russian costumes. Violet Pengot says largest one in LA. Well, okay, so the blackout scenario is built into the nuke, the EMPs, and the fallout, and then the subsequent internet censorship as the result of disease X. The memes that caused the war, the memes that caused the civil war, or that caused the terrorists to do the bad thing. But I can say with confidence that no matter how big the PSYOP gets, it's not going to change my state of mind. I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to suddenly fall into some kind of a spell and get emotionally engaged and treat it as anything other than performance art. They're performing history for us. They have total control over time. We live in a soft totalitarianism, absolute mind control, and it's done by getting people to respond emotionally like a bunch of triggered MK Ultra mind control patients. But yeah, I can't think of the last time I was triggered by a PSYOP. At best, they entertain me. At worst, they bore me with their predictability. But they do not get responses out of me. No louche. My soul is not being harvested by the design authority, by the strangers. The meta scripters and all of these Psywar events just aren't really hitting like they used to. And there's no loss because all of that extra energy, time, and attention that you would have diverted to reacting more intensely just gets repurposed. I have other things that I can invest that into now, like PSYOP trading cards, art. I mean, what a waste of our cognitive resources to overreact to a bunch of stuff that's fake. And I think a lot of people are in the state of fight or flight where they can't relax about the news. They got to stay up to speed. They got to be plugged in because it's like they have the sense that if they're not plugged in, they're losing control. Like when you're in fight or flight, to relax is to relinquish control, and it's terrifying. And so a lot of the people who are heavily immersed in like anti-vax or they're Mandela affected, they see us as apathetic, non-engaged, and therefore threatening to herd survival. And I'm saying at our level of situational awareness, we recognize that you're the one overreacting. We're not underreacting. We're responding appropriately, but we're not reacting. It's not compulsive. It's not coerced. No, we respond when we feel like it. They don't tell me when to believe. They don't put a headline in my face and say, thou shalt believe this and repeat this and spread this. I'm like, no, sorry. I'll believe it when I see the facts to support it, but I'm also just as likely to say I don't believe it, and I'll provide you reasons why. We are fomenting a culture of disbelief on purpose. And believers, it's not that they're not welcome here, but they don't have a place here. And they won't have a place here. As in, if you're a believer with some agenda, good luck trying to push it on us. Our Discord server is very resistant, very much narrative resistant. We've seen people go in not knowing what the server is, and they're trying to tell us about these various things. And I'm like, that's not even real, right? All right, everyone, thanks again for the comments. Another great year, highly productive. Introducing, of course, the handbook for the recently deprogrammed is one of the main things that we've done this year. And all of this has been enabled by all of you. This is not a one-person operation. This is a multi-million piece puzzle. One person could not do the whole thing. And this think tank is starting off 2026 exactly where it should be. And I'll do my part to get the machine put back together, get stabilized in an office space as this year rolls forward. But we're in a very good position because the important thing is we've consolidated the ideas. We've introduced the terminology, the lexicon, the ideas, even the infographics. We have the ammunition we need to do what needs to be done. This is an intellectual revolt. It's not a political movement. You could consider it maybe psychoepistemology, philosophy, but it's definitely an intellectual revolt against this encroaching dark age where this visual illiteracy pretty much is fait accompli. Like, this is a new dark age. And if you haven't figured out the off-world stage, you're probably not going to get there. Not without our help. And we're not in the business of helping anybody right now. In fact, we're burning bridges, highlighting the chasm between the duopoly and the off-world stage. This is a very important stage here. The separation, the quarantining, and then the raft as one will collide with that side of the world stage, and we will see what happens. Soap Psyopera says, I wish you all a great year no matter what comes our way. Well, we know that 2026 is going to be fake as F. That's one thing we can say for sure. None of the incoming psyops are real. Nobody's going to die. Nobody's going to cry. That's a prediction. And the next major fake event will have entertainment counterparts on all of the streaming services, and it will exist through every vector, creating some kind of an uncanny echo chamber-like effect. We can predict that. Lasers Go Pew says, can't help those who refuse. No, we don't want to help them. We want to debate them because the friction is what will help create this distinction. And we need the distinction to create the disruption. If we blend in, we play nice, there's not going to be a disruption. There has to be friction. And what we're doing is not held in the same framework, as in we have framework independence. That's a competitive advantage they can't do anything about. And when I say they, I mean anybody defending the old operating system is powerless to confront what we're presenting because this is outside of their frame of reference. They don't have the situational awareness. And this is just a fact. I know there are people who don't like labels, but you know what? Point of view matters here. And if your point of view is congruent with Wikipedia, we don't have the same worldview. And as Confucius says, the beginning of wisdom is the ability to call things by their right names. And that's what we have done. That's what the handbook is for. We have to label this invisible system, this invisible prison. We have to describe its architecture. And that requires a lot of terminology, concepts, words, and graphics. And we have it now. We have the ammunition that we need. All right, we will see you all in Discord. And what is I'm so out of sync. I don't even know what day it is. It's Wednesday. Okay. All right, so we'll be around tomorrow. Big Hair Tsunami brought in a sack of blue wrenches. Brandon, Rocco Calzone, Vertjon, Pervita, Austin, RJ, Slow Boy Whiteboard, We, Retrospectology Runner are all recipients of the highly coveted 18-inch blue titanium wrench, the likes of which dusted Dave J about an hour ago. But who's going to warn us about the chemtrails now? All right, have a great night and Happy New Year. Mine happens in about 90 minutes, so maybe I still have time. I'll try not to get hit with any of these bullets. People here are so reckless. See you in Discord. Go to ips.monster for all the relevant links.